Alrighty, hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of Raw Conversations, where we will be sharing insights and having some meaningful conversations with some amazing people in the nutrition and wellness space. I'm your host, Sharon Cryan, founder and CEO of Food Nerd, and today's guest is Stephanie Boudhein. Stephanie Boudhein is the co-founder and owner of Crummies Meatless Co. She is located in Colorado and proud to say she was born in Alaska. She's a graphic designer turned food entrepreneur and thrilled to be a small business owner in an exciting and innovative vegan landscape. So Stephanie, welcome so much to Raw Conversations. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much.
Awesome. So Stephanie, if you could just give us a little bit high level about a little background about yourself and what is Crummies?
Yes, so it is a plant-based meat alternative. It behaves like ground meat in any recipe, but all of our 7 simple ingredients come from the land and not the lab. This was developed out of necessity after I went plant-based. I was just seeing a lot of processed ingredients going into some of the larger meat alternatives I was seeing on the grocery shelves, and decided that there was a better way to do it, and that these companies may be frankly doing it wrong. So I kind of went to the drawing board, started playing with tastes and textures, and we've come up with a really fantastic recipe that is all natural.
That's amazing. So Stephanie, I kind of like to ask everybody what their vegan story is. So if you can kind of say when you went plant-based and why you went plant-based, so everybody can kind of get a little bit of your why.
Definitely. So I, back in 2017, the summer of 2017, this might be a kind of a lame story, but I watched the movie Oakjaw, which was on Netflix. It was a fictitious story about a society where they are raising, like the world is raising these super pigs for consumption for the planet. And I live in a very agricultural county in Colorado. So my drive home I pass at least 5 huge feedlots where I see, these cattle and what they're going through. And it really hit home to me. And it was literally that night I gave up on commercialized meat and went on this plant-based journey. And I am so thrilled that I did. But it meant a lot to me to do it. And it was just that night. I just did it.
That's amazing. And so your journey, a lot of the people that we have on here, their main why was for health reasons. So your journey was first compassion.
It was.
And I love that. Honestly, and I watched, is it Ocha?
Yeah, OKJA, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
I remember I watched it when it first came out because it popped up and I was like, oh,
Right.
I watched this. And I cried the whole time. Like I was just, my heart was broken. But it was so like beautifully done. And the thing is like, what it actually is saying is like things that have been happening for decades. So it's not like this super fictitious, that's kind of the things that are happening and have been happening. And I think that, thank God that came out, because I didn't even think initially that it would hit people from the vegan ethical side. And, knowing that that was like what made it click for you just shows how much power that, compassion really has. So that's amazing. Oh, okay. So you went vegan, that kind of hit you. What was your attitude about like being able to stick with it? Like, were you nervous, or because since you weren't really motivated from the health side, you were the compassion side, were you, what was your mindset and how did you kind of get through that?
Well, I was a little nervous at first. Like the next day, I was just kind of looking around my fridge and pantry, like, all right. So I decided to do this. Now what? I didn't do, obviously didn't do much research going into it. It was just sort of, head first, let's do this. My husband did most of the cooking at the time, and he did not go plant-based. He still eats meat, which is fine. But we decided, we were going to work together and be supportive of each other and really try and figure this out. So, I did a lot of the, veggie stir fries and kind of delve in that way. But we noticed that it was kind of becoming a struggle to keep it fun and interesting, and also easy to, make one meal for both of us and that we both enjoy. So out came Crummies. And now, I think that there's so many products and recipes out there for plant-based eating that it's become kind of more accessible and easier for everybody. It doesn't have to be scary. You don't have to do loads of research on it. If you've got the, the drive and the passion for it, it's absolutely there for you.
That's awesome. So, one of the things that, I've always kind of struggled with, is I was single and independent when I decided to really go plant-based. And so, it was just my decision and I went all in, and while my friends and family obviously didn't go plant-based, I lived with myself. And so I was able to kind of keep my fridge and keep, everything that felt with, kind of matched and felt right for me. But your husband isn't plant-based. And so if you can like kind of shed some light of, maybe what some of the positives and the negatives were as you kind of, since, it's been a few years now, what has that really been like, for you, on emotionally and also, just the daily?
Yeah. So I guess I was so in and passionate about it that, I wanted to shout it from the mountaintops, like, this is what I'm doing now. And, friends and family, it is still coming up in conversations, because I think there's a lot of preconceived notions about being plant-based and how limiting the diet is, and all these things, like, well, you just eat salad. And I hear the whole spectrum of things. So I'm still having conversations with family members and friends about it, which I'm proud to do. But it really just needs to be something that you kind of want to, either start out or go all in, and just listen to yourself, listen to your body, make sure you're doing what makes you feel good, and you'll be successful.
Yeah, no, that's super helpful. I mean, I know a lot of people, it's one of like, because it is, which is kind of, it still blows my mind. And I still think it's bizarre that, it's just plants. We all eat plants, right? It's just choosing to eat just mostly or all plants, right? And so,
Mm-hmm.
When you kind of have that, like, a kind of extreme viewpoint where, it's hard to connect with people who maybe do eat, animals, when you're so compassionate and so ethical. Like, I remember when I first went plant-based, like, it just hit such an emotional chord for me. And I just feel empathetic as a person, like, ever since I was young, that it heightened it. And so I would get sad if I saw a giant piece of steak laying on someone's table, on someone's plate at the table. And but I kind of like had to walk myself through that, emotionally, like, okay, like, that's their decision, that's on their own journey. At least the animal was killed, and at least it's getting consumed and not going to waste. And you'd have to like kind of talk yourself through that process. And so I know, a lot of people who initially go plant-based for the ethical, and it's really hard, it's really emotionally difficult. And I think it makes you stronger, when you have to kind of like sit and, you're not judging the person, you're judging like the industry, and you're judging how people are kind of blindsided and they're not shown the truth. And you live near, a cattle farm. And so most people don't know what goes on in cattle farms, and they don't have to see it every day.
Right.
And so, it was probably even more intense for you because you're just constantly kind of making that connection. So
Yeah.
it's tough, but, like, out of anything, something beautiful is always born. And so, any struggle will kind of push you to your edge. So, starting a business, is not easy, especially, in today's world and the economy the way it is. So you decided to follow that passion and to try to make the difference that you wanted to have in the world. So what was, what made Crummies just be a recipe at home, and what translated it to like, okay, I'm going all in? Like, what was that point for you?
Yeah, so we were really just making it in the kitchen. We had, we'd make big batches and just have some in our freezer to pull out every once in a while. And we started to, pull out these jars of our product, and we're just like, well, why couldn't we just make this available for everybody? I think we have something really special here. We'd hear it, obviously your friends and family are going to be super supportive of a new business venture. So we decided, that we were going to start at a farmer's market. And I went to the farmer's market in Greeley, Colorado, with a dream and a cooler, and it just really hit. I was doing some unintentional market research at that point. I didn't even realize that that was happening, because I didn't have a business plan at that point. I was just wanting to see what the reaction was. And even in an agricultural county like I live in, it really was successful. And I think people were open to the idea.
That's amazing. It's so encouraging. I'm so happy for you.
Yes.
And so I guess question, when it, initially was ethical, when did you kind of start diving into all the health aspects of being plant-based, and when did that connect for you?
Yeah, well, I think we were noticing, like I was saying, all the ingredients that were going into this stuff, and kind of wondering why, and what purpose did they serve on this platform. And you know, if you take out a lot of processed items out of your diet, my blood pressure dropped, my skin cleared up. Like I was noticing things about my own body, that I was really enjoying. And I also just felt less, felt mentally good about it, but also started to feel a lot healthier personally. And that's kind of when the shift happened. I knew that there was always, a lot of research surrounding a plant-based diet and being healthier for you, but really I had to see it for myself and kind of recognize those changes.
That's awesome. And I think a lot of people, like, they'll watch a documentary, or their doctor will refer them, to kind of clean up their health with more plants. And I think one of the first go-tos is, okay, if I'm not doing it for ethics and I'm just trying to do it for health, maybe I just grab these vegan meat alternatives, and that kind of becomes like the basis of your calories. And that's one of the things that we share so well, is we both kind of stand for less processed food. Like, as little of the percentage of processed food, the better for our health.
Right.
I'm across the board. And that's something that, like, science is, like, really kind of proven out at this point. And I guess our instincts know, right? Like, we look at an apple versus like an apple, like, processed bar, we're all going to say the apple is going to be healthier for
Thank
us.
you.
Like, it's just, we know. But just because of, like, the transition and products like Beyond Meat and Impossible Burgers and Meatless Farms, like, they have really, really great, intentions to get people that are needing that near exact texture, from the animal products. But, I call them the loyalty foods. Like, yes, they're great. Will I eat one once a year? Maybe, yes, but do I want to eat it every day? No, it's for me, it's the level of where I'm at with my health journeys. I don't feel comfortable eating it every day. I'd rather eat something like your product, right? That is, it's literally all whole foods. I can read all the ingredients. First ingredients, like cauliflower, like, okay, these are real foods. And I don't feel any type of guilt when I eat it. And I don't have to wonder, like, and, my insight being in the food manufacturing business as well is, like, once you dive in and you realize, how processed foods are, and these food additives and preservatives and extractions, the way that they're derived is very unnatural. And anything that's unnatural, can have harmful effects on the body. And the thing, that your product kind of highlights is, like, you can have the same exact taco, you can have the same exact, whatever it is, lasagna that you're making, and just not have to have that worry or that question of, like, why did it taste exactly like beef, and why did it, and it just takes the worry away. And so I'm like, products like yours, I'm like the pickiest plant-based person in the world. Like, if I don't make it, I'm like, I'm so sensitive. But yours is like, I would not even blink an eye, and I would want to eat it every day. I feel good giving it to my nieces and nephews. And so I'm personally super grateful for what you're doing, because it starts to clear a path for healthier, plant-based and health, instead of plant-based and, just getting people to eat the alternative. So I'm just geeking out and thanking you for what you're doing. But one of the things that, I wanted to kind of ask you about was, once you dove into it, you had such a pure recipe. Why didn't you, start doing the food scientific route and adding the additives and the preservatives? Like, what stopped you from kind of fitting that mold that every other company does?
Well, I mean, at first I mean, we are a small startup, so getting the resources to, take this, to the level of beyond and impossible, we're just not there yet. I do appreciate what you said about their goals and their vision in this industry, because I think they are really spreading the word about plant-based eating and making it more attractive to people that are, not so sure, or veggie curious, or things like that. But for us, it wasn't just looking at processed ingredients. I felt like these were also processed flavors, and you get such great flavors from natural items like our ingredient list, and it also takes on spices and things you want to add into it. It takes it on so well. It was just super unnecessary. So we just wanted to keep it simple, and there's a lot of items that are going into food that make it, extended shelf life or improve the taste and texture. I think we were already there, so I just felt it wasn't needed.
That's amazing. And, and staying true to that as you continue to grow, more pressure comes on of like, okay, maybe a larger contract may come through, but they want you to do X, Y, and Z. And it's hard. Like people don't realize for an entrepreneur, when you get that pressure and, you're not making money because you're a startup and you want to get those bigger deals to get the product into more stomachs. But a lot of the pressure that we can get from those large purchase orders is like, oh, well, we need you to do this, this, and this. And, being able to say, stick true to your ethos and say, no, there's so many companies that have these additives and preservatives. Like the shelf life that we have is because it's a whole food, it's natural. And I don't want it to compromise in that. And you shouldn't have to. And just by my interactions with you, like, I know you guys are going to stay true to that. And that makes me feel like, yes, like one will break through that will be, that will remain the same integrity. And so that's really exciting. And I'm, at Food Nerd, we're like super passionate about just the way the foods are processed and the additives. And, I think from the pros and cons of using them, kind of like you said, like there's just so many more pros to not using them. And like, just why bother? If you can get whole foods in your body and they taste delicious, like, I think we forget the goal isn't to maybe mirror exactly like the piece of flesh that we're trying to place in that burger or that taco. But I mean, you can get really stinking close with some incredible spices and incredible formulas just of whole foods. And like, why have to take it that another 5%, like, and that's kind of where I think the whole food plant-based movement is really pushing. It's like, we don't have to do that. Like, let's kind of stop with our, our palates expecting, this absolute perfection. And, that's one of the things that is we really have the food industry to blame. We've kind of have such heightened palates because of all the artificials and all of those things that aren't natural, that we just expect it to taste very, very intense every bite. And, those intense sugars and salts and fats. And, but when you eat whole foods, like your palate does change, right?
Yeah.
Like
for the better.
For the better. And it's only like my experience, it was like, it maybe took 3 weeks for like my change to really happen. And then that's all I craved was the whole foods. Like eating the process didn't satisfy me anymore. And like, I just like encourage anybody listening, like give your palate a few weeks to like go through that transition phase. Because it's crazy how quick the body responds. And then you're gonna want to eat products like yours on the daily, and it's gonna be the most emotionally satisfying taco you ever have, right? Or whatever you put it in. So that's kind of like, I just really honor you guys for like doing that. I mean, it's a tough space. I can really empathize with you. It's tough. There's a lot of pressure to make ingredients, identical to meat products. So tell us a little bit about kind of, you guys are an early startup. I imagine, kind of COVID hit probably at a very pivotal point for you guys. Can you kind of explain what your journey has been like since, I guess it's been 6 months? Wait.
Oh, wow. I can't, but you're right. You're right.
Yes. Almost. It's been over 6 months, I believe.
Goodness. It's hard to hard to, recognize that. But we were, when COVID got, it's reared its ugly head. We were actually in the midst of a entrepreneurship accelerator program, or I was rather. Crummies was on its way to hit a few restaurants on their menus. It was, really kind of gaining momentum. And, it's an interesting thing. I think there's a lot of silver lining out of this pandemic. It's absolutely an awful, life-altering situation for a lot of small businesses and families, and we're just trying to navigate this new world we're living in. It seems cliche to say that, but there's going to be so many changes in food manufacturing, food, hygiene, and all that out of this. So we're just taking all that in. I've got really sick of the word pivot, so I like to say that we're oscillating, because there's a lot of good ideas I had, and I'm not ready to totally shift from those. I'm going to come back to those.
Mm-hmm.
But let's look at another way, to make this work. The farmers markets, we weren't sure if they were going to happen this season. They did, luckily, but with changes, with the masks and the extra sanitizing and the social distancing, it did make it tricky and different. But it was a very successful farmers market season for us, and we were just really excited to still be out doing it. So the restaurants may have slowed down, understandably so. Their worlds have been turned upside down, but we're looking for more retail placement in that light.
That's awesome. And can people, I guess if they want to try Crummies, can they order them through your site right now? How can people access them anywhere in the US? Like, what is your channel like now?
Yeah, we started an online platform. Unfortunately, the fact is it is frozen, so shipping it outside of Colorado has I have a few irons in the fire to get that going, but we haven't quite cracked the frozen shipping code yet to make it affordable for a small business as well as my customers. So if you are in Colorado, you are able to order it online, and I just bring it to your front door. And that's
awesome.
Yeah, and we are in a few stores around northern Colorado, but I'm definitely looking to expand.
That's awesome. Yeah, look, I can definitely attest to it. We started out as a fresh nationwide shipment meal prep company, and logistics is really, really difficult, to get the fresh product. And COVID has kind of shown that, like, people, we want things delivered right to our house.
Right.
But, when you're competing with larger companies that have such, competitive costs for shipping, it's difficult for startups. So I empathize with you, and I'm excited for when you guys pull that iron out of the fire and you guys are able to, to kind of, ship it to me here in New York, because I will definitely, be on any type of subscription plan that you have.
Thank you.
Because I would, like I said, I feel so good about eating products like yours. And I want them in my freezer at all times. And so one of the things, I know this is like one of your taglines, which I love, and it's from the land, not the lab. And I love that because, it just kind of simplifies a lot of different, like, it hits a lot of different things, but right. The land part, I really want to kind of like emphasize, it's not just like these products aren't synthetic, they weren't designed or formulated based on any type of chemical processes. Instead, they're from nature, the way nature grew it, and you guys are just putting it together perfectly, right? So that's really super simple. But kind of going back into like the initial why I started this was to have like a ground kind of beef alternative, like a meat-based alternative. And I think that, a lot of people, and I often have to remind myself this, like every few months I have to go back and I update and I read the stats on the animal agricultural impact on the planet, because that is one of the biggest reasons I decided to live a plant-based lifestyle, was because, I want to have kids one day, and I want those kids to live on a planet that is safe and sustainable. And I think we all kind of, because the farms aren't staring us in the face, we're not seeing the direct, devastation to our planet where other countries may, or we're not seeing the destruction to the Amazon rainforest. So it's kind of out of sight, out of mind. And so, like, anybody that's listening, I just want people to kind of feel empowered that, eating a product like a whole food plant-based meat alternative like Crummies you don't have to be completely plant-based. You can literally just, even one day a week, one meal a week would make the biggest difference on the planet. And I want people to realize that, to feel empowered from it, and so every bite you take counts. It's a vote. And so I don't want people to feel like you have to completely switch over. You can have beef next to your Crummies in your freezer, and you're still going to help the planet. And so I kind of wanted to run down some high level stats that, like to this day, like still shock me. And I just hope they kind of sink in. And I know that, like, while you're doing this is like it's probably already had such a big impact on the planet. So thank you for that, for one. But yeah, on average right now, per person in the US, we eat 220 to 340 pounds of beef per person per year. So that's, 200 pounds to 300 pounds a year, just of beef a year. And to grow 1 pound of beef, it takes 2,500 gallons of water, which is, it accounts for 50% of all fresh water used in the US goes to raising cattle. And it accounts for roughly 90% of the destruction of the Amazon rainforest to this point. And I have one more stat, and like those, just those alone, like blow my mind. And I'm just like, wow, like the impact that, that your company can have over the next 5 years. Like it just excites me, because it shows that we're going in the right direction. We're doing these incredible things that will have the biggest impact. And even though you may not see it right now when you're in the trenches and you're in startup mode, but like these are the things that you guys are doing, and I'm just so grateful for it. But one last stat and then I'll stop. So it takes, from one piece of land, you will always have 15 times more protein that you can grow from a plant-based source versus an animal source. 15 times. It takes 1/6 of an acre to feed a vegan, and it takes 3 acres to feed a meat eater. And just to put that into perspective, like I said, again, the crowding out effect, even if you just eat, meatless Monday, right, whatever it is, the biggest difference. So what is, I guess, what are some of the things, like I know these stats, but how do they kind of hit you, and how do they kind of shape and form, Crummies?
Yeah, well, I mean, thank you for sharing those. I think it's really important to be aware, like you said, of what's going into your mouth at every meal. And, you talk about how much it takes to raise one, cow, let's say, but I'm around thousands of acres of feedlots. So you just think about that number growing exponentially. And, we're all going to be here for a while, hopefully, and we're going to, some of us are going to have children, and they're going to have children. We want the planet to be here for them and to thrive. And I just feel that the enormous pressures on commercialized meat and society is just, it's staggering. And I, like you said, 1 meal a day, but you make that maybe 3 meals a day or 3 meals a week. There's a term, reducitarian, that was something that we were introduced to, as we kind of formed our business plan and decided who we were really targeting. And really it was, a reducitarian is somebody that's just looking, like, is aware of the impacts of the meat industry, but maybe isn't ready to go full plant-based or full vegan. So trying to just ease into it. And it is so important to just take that one step. And like you said, give it a few weeks. Maybe it might take longer for some folks, but just give it a chance.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I love that. Reducitarian. I mean, it's, I struggle with it all the time. Like, do I want to say I'm a vegan? Do I want to say I'm plant-based?
Right.
Because it just automatically has, associations with it. So sometimes, like, I just say I love plants. I'm just gonna eat a plate full of plants, and I'm not gonna label it, and I think that, that's the kind of the vibe that I get from your company, is that it's not, it really is that kind of for everybody, right? It has that feel. So yeah, so I'm super stoked about that. Reducitarian.
I know. I loved it. When I first heard it, I was like, all right, that's going on everything. So
Right.
yeah.
That's amazing. And so some of the other things that I kind of wanted to kind of pick your brain on is, you know, in your competitive space, right? I guess competitive within the vegan world. Do you see a lot of kind of competitors popping up, and what is your what is your view for the future for the next 5 to 10 years? Like, what do you see kind of your industry kind of leaning towards in the meat alternative space?
I see it going a lot of places. I see it going up. I think there's a lot of research behind plant-based meat alternatives on the upswing. I think COVID has actually increased that.
Mm-hmm.
More people are looking into plant-based meat alternatives in their diet. The the goal for Crummies, actually had a lot of goals before COVID. So we've kind of just tried to be more cognizant and realistic about how we're going to approach all these. Um, for us as a startup and as an entrepreneur, I'm always going to say it's going to be more successful the next year and the next year and the next year, and we're already seeing those trends happen. So I think the more exposure we get, the more retail placement, it will absolutely be vital to this company and business. So we're really excited about what the future holds, regardless.
That's awesome. What is like one of the, so obviously you're a female entrepreneur, a female vegan entrepreneur, which is like my favorite group of entrepreneurs. What is, have you experienced any, difficulties as far as being a female entrepreneur? And then, also, any advice that you'd have for maybe anybody that's, looking to start their own business and, obviously male and female, very similar in so many different aspects, but we do have differences and we do have a lot of different challenges within the space. I like to always talk about, I'm so stat focused, but only 1 to 2% of female entrepreneurs get funding, to really scale their business. And funding is what will make or break a startup, right? I mean, there's a reason why such, almost 90% of businesses like don't succeed after the first 12 months. And, it's really difficult to get funding, but even more so for the female. So what has been your experience? Have you had any types of issues with that, or what's your attitude towards it?
Not as being a female entrepreneur per se, but as being a vegan entrepreneur. At the farmers markets, you're kind of face to face with your critics as well as your praise. But it is really just being open to the conversations, whether positive or negative. You never know what's going to come out of them. I've had some really, really troubling and negative conversations with folks that weren't in support of what I was doing, they said, and they ended up trying the product. So if you just got to take everything that everyone's saying, positive, negative, and just keep your focus and keep your vision in mind, and you really will surprise yourself as well as your customers, and people that you didn't even think were going to be your customers might end up trying your product.
That's awesome. What is one of the, I guess you were, because we all have it, being an entrepreneur is one of the most difficult things to do, because rarely do things go your way, right? So, like you said, pivoting or oscillating the way you said, what is like your, we all have our own kind of little things that we do to kind of like get us through those like days of like, I can't do this, or, what is, do you have a routine? Do you have like, I have a whole, like, I have vision boards. I have these things, I have these phrases and motivational things I'll read to myself. Like, what is something that you do to kind of like keep you going? Or maybe you're like, I don't need it.
I love vision boards. I have a few of those,
Perfect.
for different aspects of my life. I also find a lot of strength when I was part of this entrepreneurship accelerator program through E for All. I was lucky enough to meet 9 other entrepreneurs and have a cohort relationship. I reach out to them weekly, if not more often than that, to get ideas, bounce ideas off of them. My husband is obviously super supportive. I have a very supportive family. So I'm just constantly, again, having these conversations and just, letting it out, because you never know what you're going to gain from somebody else hearing that, like, hey, why don't you do it this way? And it's just amazing what can come out of, these ideas we have. It's always going to be a roller coaster. I think, you got to ride those highs and just deal with the lows, but there's always going to be another round coming up. Just stay
Absolutely.
positive. Mhm.
Well, I'm so happy to hear that. You know, after kind of being in the space for some years now, you know, it really is about creating a support system for yourself and, making sure. And I personally think for anybody that has a plant-based or a vegan mission, is already has just such a great support system because outside of, outside of just being plant-based, like we know, like the animals and the planet, like we have all these other things that push us, and knowing how big your heart is and how compassionate you are, I know that that's like one of the things that will kind of be your own personal internal support system, which is like exciting because I know like we'll be having this conversation in 5 years from now, and it will be the same, kind of, we're still here, we're still, we're still making the impact. And so that's really encouraging. So I'm happy that you have that support system. And we would love, as myself, but just and the whole team to kind of support you guys in any way. And I hope anybody listening, if you're not in Colorado and the product's not available, maybe when you do hear this, maybe it will be. So really, to kind of stay up to date and to keep following Crummies along your guys' journey. What is your, I guess, what exactly is your, how long have you guys been busy? Has it been, I know you went plant-based in 2017. When did you officially launch Crummies? Just so we can put like the time frame for people.
Yeah, it was a year in May, so
Oh,
we're about a year and a
wow.
half. Yes.
Yay, you made it past the year round, which is like the hardest part, which is yes. Okay. So anybody listening, yeah, by the time you hear this, it will be, a little past a year and a half for Crummies. And so in this space, you never know, you guys will be where you'll be in 3 months. So make
That's
sure,
right. Stay tuned.
exactly. So everybody, really stay tuned and keep following them. And, can you tell us where, to follow you guys on social media, and tell everybody listening where your website is and how people can support you.
Yes, thank you. So it's the website is coloradocrummies.com. We are on Facebook and Instagram, and it's at Crummies Co. So Crummies Co. And thank you so much. Yes.
Oh, that's awesome. Okay, anything that I feel like I could talk. Like now, I just like want to talk to you about all the different like emotional sides of eating. But I know like so much of what is that we've kind of touched upon of like, it is like that personal journey, and like yes, like for me, I remember my biggest like emotional food. I have a few of them, but goulash was one for me. My mom always made goulash, and the ground beef was always what I'm saying, was always in it. And so one of the first thing when I saw Crummies was like it brought me back to that comfort food. It brought me back to the goulash and like having that crumble in there and just making it so hearty. And so like as a plant-based person now, like I eat the same emotionally, same way through my food, because there's companies like yours that like allow that, right? And so I think you can probably attest to that too. Like that's probably why you made Crummies, was probably one of your emotional foods. I know like the taco filling, like that was that your main go-to?
It was Taco Tuesdays were a huge deal in our house, and they still are. So we had to. It's fantastic in tacos, but also, like you mentioned, lasagna. Like it's great in spaghetti. We are always trying to find new ways to use it, and really haven't found a bad way yet. So keep in touch, because we're gonna. Our recipes are always changing and expanding, and we love to keep innovating.
Oh, that's just, oh, I'm excited that that you guys are like on that that R&D kind of product expansion path too, because that's you know that's where I think a lot of the power it will be, is like it's kind of like taking your blinders off and be like, oh, actually I can throw this on my salad, or I can throw this on my rice, and I can throw this literally in like anything. And it also makes you a better chef too, because you're not limited to like it's just tacos, or it's
Yes.
just this, like be playful, kind of sprinkle crummies everywhere.
Have fun with it, because I mean, like I said, my husband did most of the cooking, and now it's me. I am constantly in the kitchen. Just I have found a whole new avenue for some of this energy and this passion, so it's great.
it. Awesome. Well, is there anything that you want to say, to anybody listening? Anyway, this is your moment to kind of connect and, whether it's about Crummies or it's about, just plant-based journey. Whatever your heart is wanting to say.
Thank you. And I really appreciate the opportunity that Food Nerd has given us. We are really excited about what the future holds. Like I said, my asks are pretty simple. I would appreciate a follow or a like, but also just to support small and local businesses as much as possible. There is there's some big things happening out there, and you're not going to know about them until you get to the markets or kind of look online to some of these great entrepreneurs and visionaries that are coming into the space. So thank you so much.
Oh, thank you. Yes, please, anybody listening, make sure to go to Crummy Co, and that's really how you can find them on the social medias. And yeah, really kind of stay tuned, follow, support them in any way. I know we will, as a company and me personally, like I will, first time everybody says, well, what do you eat? And they're totally talking about a meat product, Crummies will be one of the first ones I suggest. So I'm super grateful for you being on the podcast today. And anybody, please feel free to reach out to Stephanie if you have any questions about anything. I know also real quick, your products are allergen free.
They are. Yeah. We decided to be soy and nut free as well as gluten free. Yeah. We really wanted to push the allergens out of there.
Oh my God, I can't believe I forgot. Like that was one of the big things that I was like super geeked about, is because most of the alternatives have the allergens in them. They're gluten mainly, byproduct or soy. So, oh my God, that's huge. Anybody listening that like wants to eat, you're like solving so many issues. Anybody that wants to have, plant-based like meat alternative, but also like knock off the whole yucky list that's out there. Just like get it all up in one. Crummies is, yeah, you guys are amazing. I'm super excited for you guys.
Thank you so much. Yes.
But yes, thank you again, Stephanie. And please feel free, anybody that's listening, to reach out to Stephanie. And everybody, thank you so much for joining us for another episode of Raw Conversations. Please be sure to rate, review, and subscribe, and visit foodnerdinc.com for more research and scientific blogs on plant-based eating. And until next time, everyone, nerd on. Stephanie, thank you so much.
Thank you.